Hi, man. Thank you for the opportunity of, for this opportunity. I'm creating this video because I want to showcase one of my projects that I've done, development projects that I've done that I'm really proud of. This project is related to building a travel booking engine using specific KPIs that we've picked um, after trying several APIs. um, and one of the I feel a few reasons why I picked this as my favorite, because number one, this was done prior to the era of all these AI agents, coding agents, and AI agentic frameworks, right? I'm aware now we have a lot of these coding agents that can literally build you an app in a day or two, right? However, as much as speed is something that they're really good at, however, accuracy is still something that they're still lacking. That which means I'm still aware that AI agents still requires close supervision and review of what code they're outputting, right? So this was done before that era, so I'm which makes me really proud of that, right? And number two is this was done because the company I've joined um, is still fundraising. We're still in the midst of fundraising, and only then we can scale the team. So I was building this from scratch, solo, right, as a solo a dev. So which makes me really proud that I managed to get this, to production. So that's number two, right? Number three, I was basically RateHawk certified. RateHawk is um, the API, the travel API provider that we ended up choosing with, and basically because of our existing relationship with RateHawk, we ended up choosing them. And to use their API, it requires a rigorous audit. Um, every developers have to be RateHawk certified before even launching a travel booking engine using their API. And um, I was really proud that after all those rigorous bug bashing sessions and just checking, they have a huge team that actually checks my work from Figma stage, building the wireframe up to the coding part, right? Telling, you know, just defining in detail the API workflows, including what is the expected response. Because when we're dealing with hotels, there's a lot of error codes throughout the journey. Okay, so the developer has to be fully aware of that, and that's why I was really proud that I was RateHawk certified for this project. So, um, and so basically in terms of timeline, so those are the three reasons why I was part of it. Okay, now moving on, I'm gonna uh mention about the timeline. So the timeline, because this is not using AI agents that can I know that can do things fast, but I was doing it manually. So it took me 1 or 2 months on the choosing the API provider. This is where I work with the product teams and the business team, leadership team. They have all these ideas of like, okay, let's try this API, let's try this API. That went along for 1 or 2 months. I went on for 2 months, and then later on, 3 to 4 months in the actual development side. Okay, so 3 to 4 months, I started working with RateHawk, and then the certification process starts coming in towards the end before the production, which I think with 1.5 months of that within that 4 months time frame. So in total, it was a 6 months project. Okay, so that's timeline wise. Then tech stack. Tech stack, I'm using Django for backend and HTML for the front end. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I didn't use React on the front end because of time. Because we needed a to release a production ready app by the end of the 6 months. So I didn't want to delay. Um, I decided to use Django native HTML, which speaks directly, which has all these parameterized variables that speaks directly with the server side. So it makes things easy without me having to, if I were to build this in React, I'll need to build, another React app, the front end app, and then I need to create CRUD functions that communicates to API. On the backend side, I have to then expose Django functions as API endpoints, and then to make sure that, on the same time, I also need to perform some sort of, you know, um, um, hidden authentication, for example, and there's a lot of things going on there, which can easily take me 2 to 3 months just to build it. So I didn't want to hold the project because of that. So in the end, I chose to work with Django and HTML. That's in terms of tech stack. And also, the reason why I chose Django, there was two reasons also behind that. One is because my technical background, I started off as a HTML, CSS, PHP guy, and then slowly I move on to writing SQL, um, and just writing pure SQL, right, and BigQuery, PostgreSQL, and all that. And then I was slowly moving on to Python, right? So I started writing Python. Then from there, I was introduced to Django. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, I'm also aware that Django was one of the frameworks used in the early stage by Airbnb when they were building their rental booking engine, which makes me feel more confident to choose Django to power this to power backend. Okay, so um, so that to explain why Django was chosen. Okay, so um, let's see. Okay, so the way I structure the app, the Django app, is so there is the main there's the main folder. The booking engine is the main app with the settings.py. It contains all the necessary credentials, to the database connection credentials, and all the other settings, right? And then the way I structure this, you will see each um, each folder is actually a feature, right? And I separated each feature to its own respective folder, subfolder, because I didn't want any features, and any features to be um, for example, we were testing with multiple APIs. So every time I experiment with those APIs, I don't want the other API to mess with my code, the other code. So whatever the experiment here, won't touch this side. So no code, no folder is interacting with one another, right? So that's my way of preventing the code from crashing. I want to make sure that, okay, if my code works on this folder, and it's stable build, I would just maintain that folder as it is, and then start working on the other feature in the new folder. And then from there, I would then do, if necessary, do the communication if there is a need for every feature to communicate with the other feature. Okay, so for example, here Amadeus Search, Amadeus API was also one of our earlier travel APIs that we was in the contender, but we didn't end up choosing travel API. This actually was a hotel look API, which was in the contender, but it didn't make the finalist, and then we ended up with RateHawk. Okay, so and then we have flights here. Flights we use Duffel API, which has inventory to all the major flights around the planet. Okay, so um, on the the way I'm gonna show further right now that I've explained a few things in the first 10 minutes. The next 10 minutes, hopefully, I'm gonna run through the travel booking engine, here, right? This thing here, and then for every page, because every page represents a routing, URL routing. So what I'm gonna do is um, I'm gonna show you the exact functions in Django that represents whatever that we were talking about. Okay, so I'm gonna show the way it looks on the front end, and then the way it is on the back end. So on the front end side, I just want to share a little bit of story that I always love to deal with animations. So, but I'm aware that when you start working with animation, it can get really laggy. It can break. Um, for example, page speed is a very important SEO factor. Um, so we don't want Google to penalize this page. So what I ended up doing, instead of using JavaScript, or a React, where there's a lot of these effects that can be built. I ended up using I re-record the animation in a video format. Sorry, yeah, in the screen recorder, and then I export it as an MP4, and then compress it, make sure that it is under 1 MB, and then I use it as a video background instead of an animated background using JavaScript, because sometimes this cool, I don't know what we call it, wave aurora type of light can sometimes use oftentimes use WebGL, and WebGL acceleration varies from different devices. It can slow things down and makes Google penalize in terms of ranking of the page and indexing of the page. So that's that. And then there is a light mode and dark mode. Okay. The light mode doesn't have that aurora thingy. The dark mode has. Okay. So now, I want to talk about destination here. So destination, this is where I will communicate with the um, autocomplete part of the API, right? From RateHawk side. So you can see here, um, this is where I am communicating with their multi-complete API endpoint, which requires me to put the query, which is the term. The term is what I write here, right? And then what language. So they always expect things in English. They don't really have libraries for others right now, so it's always gonna be standard in English. Um, and then here I would write to basically return the all the lists from the autocomplete. So I'm just gonna show what's happened. Let's me put Florida in here, okay? So here, um, in the autocomplete response, there are two different type of things they will end up returning. One is what are the regions that resonates with the input, being inputted, right? The value being inputted. So Florida, so this is a region based, like a location based search. Hotels, this is more like a keyword based search, where it doesn't necessarily means that these guys are in Florida. It just simply means Florida is one of the word that existed in the hotel name. Okay. So I'm gonna put Florida region here because my goal is to produce Florida hotels. Okay, so I'm gonna change this to United States. Okay, one insider tip I want to share um, that I learned from the hotel API guys is that if you ever go to the booking.com or any sites, any travel sites, if you want to find a cheaper rate, try to browse on the destination currency, which means if let's say you're traveling to outside the US, let's say if you're traveling to UK, so then you would choose a residency UK to get a cheaper rate. You know that I've tried that tip before, and actually it does help me save a lot of bucks there. Okay, so yeah, that's an insider tip. So I'm gonna choose 13 to 14. Okay, I'm gonna leave it empty, leave it like this. Okay, and then search. So while searching, because RateHawk API does takes a while to return the results, um, one of the ways I've done a lot of what I call loading and performance optimization, which I'm going to share shortly, because this is like the search result page is one of the biggest load of the whole sprint. Um, this is like the biggest one. The second biggest is the payment stage wise, where how do we deal with all the different error codes? So that's the second biggest, but this is the biggest one, and I'll tell you why. So one of the things that I do to ensure a better user experience to prevent churn rate, to prevent drop off, is to build that loading instance, which grabs a random pick of the day, and we normally pick 5-star hotels, um, and really nicely reviewed hotel. Okay, now um, now you're gonna see like it is simple, but there is a lot of challenges that I face with RateHawk API, which requires me to kind of like um, uh, it really there's a lot of things that actually um, um, help us shape the decision that I ended up making with the whole idea, the roadmap of the product. Okay, so um, what it's very simple. This is again straightforward. You've seen this happening in all the other travel apps, right? So before I move on to the other ones, right, I'm going to share about what specific performance optimization I've done here so that you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, one of the things that I've done here was to implement the lazy loading effect, right? You can see here again one of the challenges that RateHawk has is they have a very low API rate limit, and so I had to ensure that we implement the lazy load because I didn't want. So what's going to end up happening? RateHawk API, because of their slowness of um, uh, giving out responses, I needed to make sure that the customer don't ended up waiting too long, right? Or else the loading page that you saw just now can easily extend to a minute or 2 minutes just to build these results for you. So what I ended up doing was instead of letting the customer wait the whole, like whole 1 minute, I would decrease the loading time to 15 seconds at most so that um, the we'll fetch the first 3 to 5 hotel results that we get from the whole, because sometimes a location can produce 300 to 500 hotels, per location. So in order to make sure that we don't let the customer wait too long, I implement the lazy loading here. Okay, the lazy loading is to allow us to basically interact with RateHawk without always hitting that limit. We don't want to abuse that limit, or else RateHawk is going to return some error codes, and then it's going to say something like, API rate limit reached, and then please try again later. So you'll see here the way I do it is I install a intersection observer, which is going to check where exactly is the user is in terms of the squirrel activity, right? I'm just gonna search here and perform a search intersection observer. There we go. So here, I have this script that will um, only show hotel if they are, if we intersect with it, and it becomes there in the viewport, it becomes visible in the viewport. But sometimes what happens is that sometimes, and I'll tell you, sometimes when you scroll, sometimes you can scroll really fast, right? So if I scroll really fast, this motion will produce an abuse to the RateHawk API. We're gonna sending bursts, and then suddenly the request spikes, right? So I added another thing which is called a 2-second timer, which will only fetch the hotels only if a user stayed for 2 seconds within that frame, within that viewport. So you can see here, wait 2 seconds, and then the thing loads. Okay, and the thing loads, right? And this is how, again, I'm preventing that RateHawk API limit being abused, which is really bad. If I'm trying to prevent that error from coming in, because or else data won't return, right? So you might notice something here. So when you're loading things, you might be able to see the price, right? Because the way they design it is they have the bulk, they have the API endpoint that returns results in bulk. Okay, and then um, if you want more information like the images, the latitude, longitude, the stars, the reviews, all this comes later, right? All this comes later from their hotel info endpoint. But when you're running a search, um, when you're running a search, I'm calling there are the API endpoint. Just a second. The search SERP region. There you go. Right now, the search SERP region can basically have a really large hotels limit. Like you can call 500 all at once, right? This is why I was able to basically call the results and kind of populate based on the pricing point and the hotel ID, right? Then using the hotel ID, only then I return I this is another second endpoint um, being being called. So the first endpoint is the search region, which helps me populate the cards. You'll notice that I'm using a scaffolding way, right? Of using of before the hotel results is shown, right? The scaffolding animation, and just building the cards help me kind of because in the end I need to instantly know how many hotels matches that intended search value. For example, how many hotels count is returned from the keyword Florida, right? So, and I need to ensure that I'm building the cards on the UI first. Make sure that the cards are all there. All these cards are generated first, right? The data can come later. So this is how I make sure that all the cards are built, which is really fast, right? The only thing that takes time is this whole hotel info thing. And the hotel info, as I mentioned, doesn't work in the so you can see here hotel info endpoint only returns results one by one. Okay, so there are two workarounds, okay, about on how to work around this. Like we can either have like the way I'm doing it right now, right? The way I'm doing it right now is I'm calling it one by one, because the hotel info endpoint doesn't support batches, because hotel info response is really huge for even just one hotel. The JSON response is so huge that it makes sense why RateHawk only does this one by one. Now, the this is not the best practice, right? That is done by um, Booking.com or Expedia. Definitely, they're not doing it this way. The other way that I'm not able to show in this demo, unfortunately, is where the next build that I built was literally we import their, I think it was a 40 GB of hotel static data of 2 million hotel inventories throughout the whole world stored in our database, right? So um, when it's stored in our database, it makes it easy for us to query all this information in batches rather than doing it this way, which is definitely it's not the most conducive way, it's not the best practice way, but it is the best that we can do based on the RateHawk API limitation. Because um, can you see the filters up here? Here's another problem. When things are lazy loaded and I have these filters will find based on any available data, any available. So can you see that here? It doesn't even load the star ratings or whatsoever. So anything that's not lazy loaded yet, we won't be able to filter them. It will only filter based on whatever that is available at the moment, right? Whatever that's available. See, this is not even everything. It is definitely more. There's definitely more four-star hotels in Florida. But remember, as I mentioned to you, this is why it is not the best practice to use this method, in building booking engines. So at some point, we migrated to Azure. We had a scholarship from Microsoft for $150,000 for a 1 year scholarship using the cloud. And from there, I started working on shifting our database to Databricks, right? So I use Azure Databricks and basically, perform, I assign an engine, the processing engine, and also I did, what is it called? This is where I use Delta Lake feature of Databricks, which allows columnar-based processing, ACID type transactions, and a unified bash and partitioning, which makes it really easy to query. For example, please return me 500 hotels information, like an extended information, full information in few seconds. You can definitely do that with Azure Databricks, which is really powerful. And that is how, and then unfortunately, because I don't really have access to the Azure Databricks anymore, and so that's why I couldn't show this in this demo. But all I can share is what ended up happening was we ended up migrating to Azure. We used the app service, and then I used Delta, the Delta Lake of Azure Databricks to perform the real-time search processing. In terms of whenever you search something from Florida, it will no longer hit this endpoint anymore. It will just hit the custom endpoint from Azure that I've built. So which is really really powerful. Like it was really fast. Like I mean, it was like microseconds, like less than 1 second. I don't even have to do all this lazy loading and stuff like that. So that would then allow me to then perform filtering across all the available information from that 500 hotels easily without the need to like worry about like, okay, what's going on here, how can I make sure that all this data is loaded, and then we can filter based on that, right? So yeah, so again, this is why this page alone has a lot of information. The implementation of it has like there's a lot of these bits of information that is super crucial of for you to understand my thought process on how do I approach these shortcomings, these challenges. How do I improve the product based on that? How do I make my decisions on what to code based on that? So and then again, standard stuff. This is really light code. I mean, light coding stuff. Literally just persisting the hotel data information to this particular URL. Um, this particular URL, where this is still the hotel. What is it called? The hotel info API. But and this is also coming from the rooms API, which is so it returns the what are the available rooms and inventory based on the hotel ID being chosen by the customer. In this case, it will return to me in the so all this literally is objects, so it gives a long array. Depending on what hotel you choose. For example, let's choose another one. Let's choose probably a cheaper one, maybe. low to high. Um, let's see what does this. So you can see here in that JSON, it returns all these a long array of all the available rooms for that particular date. It involves the room picture. The room picture itself is also an array because sometimes there is more than one photo per room. But here I'm just showing just one picture, right? And then here again, this is all coming from the the API response as well, including the cancellation fee as well. So these are pretty straightforward. Okay, nothing much I would say. Then when you click reserve, and then and then I would then fill up information, the user details. Just gonna put my name here, and then here, and then I'm gonna put United States. Okay, traveling for leisure. Next. Um, and then boom, checkout, payment, and stuff like that. Okay, so and here is what's happening on the back end, right? You can see this is the long JSON response that was parsed from the back end to front end. So just to show a little bit here, so this is the search view. um, the search view, this is the hotel detail that I was talking about. um, you can see here bedding type mapping. um, this is the images, because the images has a certain way on how it appears on the backend, sorry, on the JSON response. So I need to make sure that the parsing is done correctly. And then appending this for the later stages, which is the payment stage. Get traveler, book room. So book room is the one before that. So this is book room API. Then the payment, right? So the book room is here. Boom, 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 boom. Let's see, anything else I wanted to show. Um, payment, yeah, payment view. There we go. So payment view fetches all the information from the session, because I store everything in session storage and keep it persisted. So whatever that is filled up here will then appear here on the payment side. Save original payment details, log current transaction, child details. Yeah, child details is very important. They have a very specific ways of handling um, they have a specific API instructions when it comes to when you have child um, going with you alongside parents. So that's why I have a separate lines of code for handling this. Um, Credit card number, and bear in mind all information is encrypted and is never stored in the database. It's only encrypted just because I want to make sure that there's no one hijacking